afternoon. Ooh, I hated that. Sorry, it's afternoon when I'm recording this. Did not enjoy that. Good. Hello. Hi. It's Saturday, January 3rd, National Right to Congress Day. And oh, buddy, do I have some things to write to them about. We're doing a special episode today. And now, the special episode. This will be a special episode. I'm recording this Saturday afternoon, Los Angeles time. Things are moving fast. I don't know what things will look like by the time you hear this, but I wanted to give you the latest and, more importantly, some context on a story that is breaking right now. This morning, just after 2 a.m. local time in Caracas, Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, who I will refer to here as the president, but understand that for reasons I'll explain here in this episode, that is a very complicated issue, and he is not seen that way by many Venezuelans or many in the international community, as well as his wife, were captured by U.S. forces. Following that, President Trump announced that the United States will apparently be running Venezuela for the time being, as well as tap their oil reserves. Like I said, things are moving fast, but the story is shocking. It is a shocking story. The President of the United States went into another country and has declared that we're going to run that country now. Shocking. How did we get here? On July 5th, 1811, Venezuela became the first I forgot to tell you, I'm going way back. 1811. I remember it well. I was just out of high school, I believe. On July 5th, 1811, Venezuela became the first Spanish colony in South America to declare independence from Spain. 29 years later, they became fully sovereign after the Venezuelan War of Independence, as well as their separation from Gran Colombia. In their early years, they primarily made their money through agriculture, things like coffee and cocoa. Then, on April 15th, 1914, the country was changed forever when the Caribbean Petroleum Company became the first company to successfully strike oil in the country in commercially significant quantities. Foreign oil companies came in, with U.S., British, and Dutch companies dominating the field. But although this was happening on Venezuelan land, and it was Venezuelan oil that the companies were taking, the country only got royalties. As a country, they did not hold any of the power. They were oil-rich, though. The agriculture industry fell, since oil production was where the money was, forcing the country into an economy that was only being propped up by this one thing, by oil. And while they did see things like ports and roads and other infrastructure grow, this was really the only thing that propped up Juan Vicente Gómez. Now, who was Juan Vicente Gómez? Ruling from 1908 to 1935, Gómez was one of the longest ruling dictators in Latin American history. And we're talking about a true dictator here. No elections, no political parties. He had his oppositions jailed or exiled or killed. Those royalties from oil, sure, yeah, they built roads and ports and they paid off the country's foreign debt, but they also lined his personal pockets. Part of the reason that he was able to stay in power for so long is because he used some of the money to pay for security to make sure that no one took him out of power. When he died in 1935, Venezuela had money and infrastructure, but things like universities and labor movements had been crushed, and the political culture as a whole had basically been wiped out. From there, the country saw decades of moving towards democracy and then losing it, and then trying to rebuild it. Look at us as a country. Democracy is this magical, messy, fragile thing that we are desperately holding on to right now. To lose it and then continue to fight for it over and over and over again, that takes work. And of course, it is not going to be easy or linear. While all of that was happening with their leadership, oil production in the country continued to boom, and Venezuela went from being one of the poorer countries in Latin America to one of the richest. In 1960, they became a founding member of OPEC, which is the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. The main goal of OPEC is for its members to work together to stabilize prices and prevent overproduction. Venezuela was a U.S. ally. But what goes up, famously, must come down. Oil prices began to fall in the 80s and 90s. Again, everything in this country was being funded by this one thing. But suddenly there was an increase in international production, which meant they weren't selling as much. And then thanks to two oil crises in the 70s, countries started to reduce their use, which meant Venezuela needed to borrow. Their debt exploded, leading to Black Friday. Not the super cheap, get a good TV for $5 kind. But in 1983, their currency collapsed. And their government was like, ooh, sounds bad. We should make zero changes and continue to borrow a ton of money. The super rich were doing just fine. Everyone else was forced to pay the price. Financially, yes, but also in things like the deterioration of public services. Gas prices went up. Transportation prices went up, social spending went down. This is a tale as old as time. What do you think happens when the super rich are doing great and everyone else is getting screwed specifically because of the decisions the government is making? The Caracazo. Mass protests broke out in 1989, not only in the capital city of Caracas, but many other cities as well. Over the course of 7 days, at least 5 articles of the country's constitution were suspended. Yes, there was looting. Yes, there were riots. But Army Lieutenant Jesus Manuel Zambrano said that he received instructions that day saying, quote, "Go ahead and neutralize that looting. How you do it is not my problem, but neutralize it." End quote. In the end, though the exact numbers aren't known, hundreds, if not thousands, of people were killed. The state turned its gun on its own people to protect an economic system that it broke. This idea of democracy that its citizens had been fighting for suddenly became this thing that did not seem possible, which became the perfect door for a man named Hugo Chávez to enter through. In 1992, he attempted a coup as a mid-level army officer. It didn't work, and when he gave himself up, he gave a brief speech in which he told the remaining coup members to lay their weapons down, saying they had only failed por ahora, for now. He became a symbol for millions of Venezuelans, and though he was jailed for 2 years, he was pardoned in 1994. In 1998, he won the presidency. A new constitution was approved the following year, voting rights were expanded, democracy itself expanded in the country, but it also constricted, because it all flowed through one person. In 2002, there was a failed coup against Chavez. How the turntables, you know what I mean? Around this time, oil production temporarily collapsed. In 2013, oil was a political tool, and production in the country was stagnant. Democracy had failed Venezuelans multiple times, and so for many, it probably felt like this strong leader who they liked, who was delivering tangible improvements, it probably didn't feel like yet another centralization of power. It wasn't one big power grab. It expanded little by little. The courts, the legislature, the media, weakened a little here, then a little bit more there. There was no moment when this happened, no singular moment. It just slowly but surely, little by little, loyalty started to matter more than independence. And while that was happening, money from oil was still coming in, and it was still funding social programs. So the visuals that would normally raise a little bit of a red flag were masked. Money was still coming in. These social programs were still being funded. And it doesn't mean Venezuelans are naive or were being naive. It doesn't mean they weren't paying attention. It doesn't mean they didn't or don't care about democracy. They chose a leader over institutions because those institutions failed them. And in the end, they were failed yet again. In 2013, when Chavez died, his vice president, a man named Nicolás Maduro, took over. He served as the interim leader until he was formally elected to office in a special election. This is who Chavez explicitly, quote, "as clear as the full moon," end quote, picked as his successor. Now, at the beginning, you will remember that I said referring to him as the president is complicated. In 2013, he won that special election with about 50.6% of the vote, and 80% turnout. In 2018, he ran for his first full 6-year term. 46% of voters turned out for this election, making it the lowest in the country's history. Remember everything I have told you about this country, everything I said about the way it has fought for democracy, gained it and lost it in fits and starts. 80% of voters turned out in 2013. 5 years later, are we really expected to believe that the country would see its lowest turnout, lowest by 15%, and that was back in 2000, naturally? No, of course not. The reason for that low turnout is that the political opposition decided not to participate. Why not? For starters, the election was held months early, meaning that opposition groups could not truly organize, which is kind of fine because the major opposition candidates were banned, jailed, exiled, disqualified, or just pressured not to run. State media was used to influence voters for Maduro. Social benefits and food aid were tied to loyalty for Maduro. Public employees were pressured to vote for Maduro. It's not hard to win when you take away every other option. 46% turnout. 46 countries, America included, do not recognize the legitimacy of Maduro's election. Many within Venezuela feel the same way. In 2024, he won re-election through these same tactics. And it's not like people suddenly were like, all right, you got us. Now we believe you. People still do not recognize him internationally as well as within the country as the legitimate president. What happened on Saturday morning requires us to hold two thoughts in our head at the same time. Venezuela and Venezuelans deserve much better than Nicolás Maduro. Let them celebrate. Let them react however they want. Unless you are from there or you are there right now, you have no idea what Saturday felt like. I have no idea. Under his governance, the country has seen the political imprisonment of opposition leaders, excessive and sometimes deadly force in response to protests, the disappearance of critics and civilians, the weakening of checks and balances and strengthening of state power, food and medicine shortages, widespread corruption, and as the country watched its health system collapse, his government has restricted international assistance. And also, in this country, we have a president who wants to be a dictator. He has said things like, quote, "You'll never have to vote again," and, quote, "I'll be a dictator, but only on day one." And without Congress, he led a military operation to remove the leader of a country and is now vowing to run that country. Would he perhaps like to show us that he can successfully run this country before he goes off to run another one? This is a clear violation of Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, as well as the War Powers Resolution. But here we are, yet again. It's all just a little bit of history repeating. A United States president has removed another country's leader and put troops into that country over oil. Two things can be true. Two people can be bad at once. From day one of Trump 2.0, this administration has kidnapped Venezuelans off the streets here in America and sent them to a self-proclaimed torture prison in El Salvador for the grave crime of being Venezuelan. They are still there right now, hundreds. We do not know if they are here legally. We don't know their status at all. They are just there. He took away their temporary protected status. Pete Hegseth is bombing boats that he has decided are carrying drugs. He's offered no proof. We're just supposed to trust him. Trump declared the entire country a foreign terrorist organization. Whole thing. That's impossible. One whole country can't just all be one thing. That's scientifically impossible. It's also legally, literally impossible. It changed nothing. He just was like, here's something racist to say. He has lied over and over and over again. He tries to say that this is all because of drugs. Fentanyl specifically. Fentanyl comes in through Mexico. It is produced by chemicals that are sourced in China. It was always about oil. So while the president, who appeared to struggle to stay awake during the press conference, tries to convince you otherwise, remember that if he is running his mouth, he is lying. Okay, I'm back. I was just editing that episode, and then I talked to my one friend who is from Venezuela, and I want to be really clear. I'm not saying my one friend who is from Venezuela. I'm saying I talked to my one friend who happens to be from Venezuela. And I want to pass along some things that she and I were talking about because I'm not from Venezuela. I'm from America's finest city, San Diego. And earlier in this episode, I meant what I said. If you're not from Venezuela, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's been like. I don't know what it's like there. But as we were talking, a couple things came up that I felt like were important enough to come back on here and record some more. Because there were some points of clarity that I felt like were important enough to make sure were in this episode. The first thing is this. In the beginning of the episode, I had referred to Maduro as the president only for clarity, but then noted that he is not seen as the president internationally or by those within the country. I want to double down on that based on this conversation. Not only is he not seen as the president, he is not the leader of the country. He is not the president, nor is he a leader. He brings in terrorists from Iran and gives them Venezuelan passports so that they can be criminals in the country. Venezuela as a whole is not, as I said, not an international terrorist organization. The country as a whole is not a drug trafficker. That all of one country cannot be one thing. That's scientifically impossible. Nicolás Maduro is behind most of the drug trafficking into the United States. Other news organizations may refer to him as the president, may refer to him as the leader of the country. That is not what he is referred to. That is not how he is seen by Venezuelans in the country or that have left the country. And I cannot be clear enough about that. And this is the other thing that I want to be very, very clear about that came from my friend, and I just really felt like this was the thing that prompted me to go back and record more. There's a lot of uncertainty because Trump is the one that went in and removed Maduro from the country. But Iran, China, and Cuba take the oil from Venezuela. They want the United States there. Because it was Trump, it's really hard to know what's real and what's not real. But they would rather have the United States than another country there. I'm going to give you this quote. I asked if I could pass along this quote because this is what she said. Quote, "I don't think enough people understand what our country has been going through for 30 years. Literally, Trump can't make it worse. Nobody can." We are a little baby country. We just got here. We're like, we're so young. And we've only been doing fascism and dictatorship for such a short amount of time. And only we have it bad here by our own standards. I don't mean to belittle what's happening here in America, because here in America, what is happening to certain people, I sit in a very blue state, and I'm coming from very privileged, I'm very privileged in a lot of different ways. I am white, I am in a blue state, I come from a lot of privilege. Donald Trump's presidency is a very real threat to a lot of people here in this country, and by no means do I mean to belittle that threat to them. His presidency is an active threat to a lot of people. But it's been at the most 16 years of that threat. I think that our American brains cannot quite wrap our heads around what it has been like to be in that situation for 30 years. And I think instead of telling another country how they should react to this moment, instead, we should just listen and understand that context matters, that multiple things can be true at the same time, and that yes, it is, there are a lot of unknowns. Yes, it's not great that it's Trump, but my friend was very clear and really wanted to make sure that people understood that given every scenario, given everything else, they would rather that it be Trump. Because if it is Trump, at least it's America. They see him for who he is. And seeing all of that, understanding everything that he brings, this is preferred. Other countries steal their oil. They would rather that we be there because it's still America. Given everything, they are still happy that we are there because it gives them a new path forward. 30 years. It's very complicated feelings, I'm sure. But, like I said, let them celebrate let them react however they want to. Because at the end of the day, they got this awful person who has been running their country terribly out. Not too bad of a Saturday morning, I would say. So there we go. Thank you to my friend for being smarter than me, in this respect only, and sharing her thoughts on this, as she does, quite frankly, with every single thought she's ever had. And it is one of many of my favorite things about her. I'm not going to give her too many compliments. It's going to go straight to her head. I said this during the New Year's Eve episode, but it bears repeating. Venezuela is real. It is not a punchline. It is not an example. It is real. The people there are real. And after everything he has done, it is not nothing that Maduro is out. It is also not okay that the President of the United States, without the approval of Congress, in direct violation of our U.S. Constitution, just decided to go over to another country, decide that we are now running that country, and he is doing it for oil. Anyone who tells you that they know what happens next is lying. And that's it. That's the special episode. I am proud of Venezuelans. To continue to fight for your country over and over because you know it can be better. Because you demand better of it. That is bravery. That is true patriotism. That is the picture of loving your country. Being happy that someone who has been horrific to people in your country, being happy that person is gone, that is also patriotism. We can hold two thoughts in our head at the same time. And also, I'm proud of writing letters to Congress because there's something I would like to talk to them about. It's called the 25th Amendment. We have many amendments. One of them is called the 25th, just if we're writing letters to Congress. And speaking of writing letters, I'll tell you something interesting is that this is, depending on how you are taking in this episode, if you're listening or seeing it, if you're listening with your ears or listening with your eyes, this is a direct letter to tell you, got there eventually, I'm proud of you.